Now, broadcasting on Rockstar Worldwide from the Double Wide Production Studios, this is the Home Movie Legacy Project with your host, Rhonda Vigeant.
I got an icon camera. I love to take a photograph. So mama, don't take my chrome away.
Rhonda and her guests will share home movie stories that will tug at your heartstrings. You'll learn how to organize, digitize, share on social media, and use your home movies as genealogy research. Learn how to repurpose or even monetize found footage. This is the Home Movie Legacy Project. And now, here's your host, Rhonda Vigeant.
And welcome to the Home Movie Legacy Project, where we focus on exposing real solutions to create a media legacy that lives. Happy Thursday, everybody. I'm excited to be with you today for the next hour to offer you education, inspiration, and hopefully some great tips about home movies. Today, I'm actually dedicating the whole hour to what I'm calling home movie education. I mean, you know, at some level, that's what this entire show is about. And I think I'm right at about show 100. I was looking at my roster of shows, and I'm finishing up my first year here on Star Worldwide. It has been an amazing year. And you add that to my arsenal of other shows I've done, I think we're right around 100. So for those of us who have listened to me for all 100 hours, I think you deserve a round of applause. And I always tell my family, someday when I'm gone, if you ever miss me, you've got a lifetime of information and hours of my voice. So that'll be part of the legacy I'm creating for sure, is this body of work here on the Home Movie Legacy Project. But once a year, sometimes twice a year, we do something really special for our listeners and for anybody who's interested in archival media. And we offer an 8-week class. We offer an 8-week class on home movie education that's really going to give you some in-depth knowledge and tools on how to manage your family archive. I mean, obviously, if you're somebody who follows the show, you already have that interest as being a family historian, or many of you are photo organizers from APO, the Association of Personal Photo Organizers, who is also a sponsor of the show. So thank you, APO. And or you're doing genealogy research, or you're a documentarian wanting to bring archival footage into a documentary. Whatever your reason is for working with archival history on a personal or professional level, the best thing you can do for yourself, honestly, is take my 8-week intensive class, because you will just learn so much of things that there's no way that we could ever cover on the show in the depth we're going to cover them in our class. So that you can really become an expert of curating your own archive. You know, one of the women who took my class last year, her name is Kirsten Larvik. I've been dying to get her on the show, and I will pretty soon. But one of the reasons she took it is she kind of decided she wanted to start a nonprofit for her own family archive. She had inherited a bunch of amazing home movies from her family and really liked my message, which is, instead of just turning all your media over to an outside archive or organization, because we somehow have the mindset that they're going to take better care of our media than we will, she likes my message, which is we should be the curators of our own media. And then, of course, share copies of it with other people, because we want to share that material with as many people as we can, because they are historical documents. But with that being said, after she took my class, she went on to start a 501c3 called the Al Larvik Audiovisual Fund. She asked me actually to do some consulting work for her, which was awesome. I was very happy to do that last year. Then when they officially got the 501c3 status, she asked me if I'd come on as chairman of the board. I'm like, okay, I'd love to do that. I've never done anything like that before, or worked with a nonprofit. So it was claiming new ground for myself. And now we're in our first fund granting cycle. The grant has actually been written, and people are going to start applying for it. And she's asked me to go to North Dakota with her in September, where we're going to be launching a series of home movie education workshops to the public in the towns where her family grew up. And so, you know, it's amazing how many people you can move, touch, and inspire with your own archive if you know what to do and how to do it. And that's what my 8-week class is about. There have been some other amazing stories that have come out of home movie education in terms of people talking to other people about what they may have in their archive, and then documentaries being created. And a lot of those people I've had on the show over the years. I've had Armin Ra. And his movie is called actually When My Sorrow Died, which is kind of a heavy title because it's actually a very light film about him being a thereminist and a person who came here to this country from Iran when the Shah was first invading Iran, and how he was part of the early club scene and cross-dressing scene in New York City. I mean, great stuff. Another one, Do-Si-Do in the Sky, came out of home movie education, where a person who'd been listening to me then went on to make a documentary about the U.S. square dancing helicopter team. So I'm offering for you to learn even more about your home movies by taking this class, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So here with me to kind of banter back and forth, because sometimes I think it's better to have somebody else besides just me, is my unofficial guest and co-host, Phil Vigeant. So hi, Phil.
Hi, Rhonda. How are you?
I'm great. And I want to thank you for really pushing me and encouraging me to teach a series of online classes, because without your inspiration of having to do it on the filmmaking side, I don't know that I would have done it on the archiving side. And education is really what brings us to the next level in whatever it is we're trying to accomplish.
Yes, it's quite difficult to understand the technical that goes into this whole process. Every year that goes by, I think, oh, wow, they have a new solution to how to deal with putting film on digital and dealing with their archive. And unfortunately, for your listeners and for the general public, it's just getting more complicated and more complicated. There's just no end to the diversity with which pictures are being used. And diversity is wonderful, but diversity also requires technical understanding in order to utilize. So as I found out through my trying to expose you personally to what I was doing technically in terms of our archive and what you were trying to show and explain to your audience, it became clear to me that this isn't something you can have a casual conversation about on an hour radio show. It's something that you have to spend some in-depth time, and someone has to, like you have, sort it out and break it down into categories and to really delve deep into what it is that you have to do to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. And, I've spent a lifetime doing this, almost 40 years. And you've really consolidated in 8 weeks the main topics that I think people have to understand in order to be able to do any of this stuff. And if they don't educate themselves to at least that level, I mean, 8 hours, I mean, you think, oh my God, what could they possibly talk about in 8 hours, right? We could probably go for 80 hours easily on this subject, but you've consolidated it down nicely and put it in what I call layman's terms, so that that the listener of the course will not get confounded with too much technical, which is very easy for us who've done it for 40 years to do to people. And you're really the translator between those and that technical art, which is filmmaking. So I found it an invaluable experience, both teaching you, watching you organize it, and then seeing how other people then can take that information that we have that's so important to this process and actually apply it, because it doesn't do us much good to have the information if we can't share it with the audience.
No, and originally I thought the course would just be for my APO members, the Association of Personal Photo Organizers. I'm a huge fan of that organization, as you know, because these are people who run their own photo organizing businesses, but they're part of this APO organization. The organization is a professional association that actually trains their members on how to deal with people's archival media. And when that organization first started, they weren't really thinking about home movies. They were thinking about photos and slides. But as these pioneers, as I like to call them, started going into people's home, invariably everybody said, what do I do about my home movies?
Yes, and I think that they tried to apply some of the things they understood about still photography, which is photography, is done on film, is archived in many of the same ways, but the whole problem set that comes into the volume of material that you have when you're talking about movies, and a whole bunch of the things that just don't work in movies that work in stills, represents an incredible challenge for those people who are, proficient at still photography. I mean, these APO members really do understand, what to do with stills, how to archive them, and that. But even though movies are created from the same materials, they're a whole different beast in terms of understanding. And they, the ones who've taken the class, wisely understand that in order to be able to be of service to their customers who have these things, who have high-A tapes and DVDs and home movies and 8mm and 6, all the various configurations, that they would have to get some education in terms of the movie side of the business. And some of them have blossomed in terms of their business and have really created a whole revenue stream for their still photography organizing within the movie context. But the ones that have been successful have had to learn a bunch of stuff.
Yes.
That I don't think that at first they thought, oh, I do stills and I put slides on digital. I can just, easily do home movies. And that's been a painful lesson for them that the movie business is very different. And even some of the companies who are quite successful at the still photography side of this, who try to do the movie photography side of this, miserably fail and make some very unhappy customers and don't understand why they have very happy customers on the still side and do not have happy customers on the movie side.
Right.
It's just, there's a lot of fundamental stuff that's different about movies than still photography. And if you're not willing to learn those differences and you're not willing to embrace what it is to be movie, then you're going to have a hard time.
Exactly. And so one of the things that we like to talk about is, that when you move film to digital or even videotape to digital, that it's not a one-time set it and forget it thing, and that's why ongoing home movie education is so important. In fact, even for the people who've taken my class, I'm allowing them to take the updated version because the material I'm teaching now has changed significantly in 2 years.
Yes, I mean, we're a part of an ongoing process, which is, the motion picture industry. And we function within the confines of the motion picture industry. So we're taking firsthand the information of what the major studios are doing, and we're applying that to individuals. So we take a look at how Warner Brothers deals with its humongous home movie library, and we look at the methods that they're using, and then we see where that would be applicable, cost-wise and structure-wise with what's out there, so that the individual can be his own curator, but taking the thinking of Hollywood, which is really on the planet the most concerned with moving images in the world, is the way that the movie business thinks about their pictures, because their pictures are the most valuable in terms of assets on the planet. So if a major studio is going to do X, Y, and Z to preserve their films, we should look at X, Y, and Z in terms of somebody's home films and see where we can at least take the thinking or the understanding, or where are they going? They're progressing all the time,
right?
And we need to progress with them so that we're taking advantage of the best technologies that are available for archiving home movies.
I have a great example of that, because when I first started getting out there speaking and I wrote my book, and even the first time I launched my class and started seriously blogging, one of my blog posts said, why you don't want to transfer your home movies to DVD. And I got a lot of flack about that because I was a little bit ahead of my time in terms of bringing that idea to consumers. But that's an idea that had existed here with our professional clients for a long, long time. Right. And I think that was probably one of the most valuable pieces of information where people had an aha about why you may not want to put your stuff on DVD. And that's just one of the things we talk about in the class. So let's give our listeners today a little tip. In terms of why we recommend that people put home movies on a hard drive instead of a DVD.
Yes, well, like now I think the general consensus in the market is shifting is finally catching up to you, in that most people see that DVD is just a digital form of their analog materials, but it is not a better archive of their materials. And I think what a lot of people falsely understood was that, oh, because it's digital, it's now future proof and it's safe, unlike their older analog things that had the potential to degrade over time. And what they've experienced is that not only is the digital version in DVD nowhere near as good a quality as their original, but also not even as good an archive material as their original. So what did they really accomplish by moving their home movies to DVD? All they accomplished was an easier way to play them. Okay, and that's valid. I mean, for lots of us, the convenience of being able to play those old films by popping them into a machine under a television set is worth a certain amount of money. But that's all they accomplished. They didn't really accomplish archiving of that material. They didn't really accomplish future-proofing that material. They didn't really accomplish all the things that really, if you're going to spend a lot of money doing this process, you want to accomplish. You want to make sure that what you did sets this thing up for the future and not just something so that the present is a little bit more convenient. And as we've seen in areas like the record business, some people have actually returned to the record as a playback of audio, as people have returned to playing back some of these archival film materials, because putting it on DVD doesn't really do that much, and they can accomplish seeing those things without that process at a lot less expensive kind of cost.
Right. Well, the other thing is technology has given us fantastic ways to share our home movies.
Right.
And so the experience of now bringing home movies as data files onto a hard drive onto your computer and then editing them and then sharing them in many fantastic ways is something that is way more powerful than just handing somebody a DVD.
Right. I mean, take a basic development, YouTube.
Yep.
Right? I mean, how many people want to see their pictures on YouTube? Well, going from film to DVD, then trying to get the DVD onto YouTube requires a whole nother process to take that DVD, the material off the DVD, get it into a format that is YouTube compatible. If the film was originally transferred to a hard drive, that's an easy process. But from a DVD, it's a whole retransfer of the material.
Yes, and that's something that, as we said, is an idea that's really starting to resonate with people as they get newer computers, particularly Macs, that have iMovie built right into it. Mm-hmm. They can do fantastic things. And so these are some of the things we really get into in depth in the class. The other thing is this whole idea of bridging family history through technology and how you can really be head of your own studio. Now here at Pro 8mm, we do fantastic transfers, and we do spend an entire module talking about the different ways that we transfer film to digital. But once that transfer is done and on a hard drive, we don't do finished product. Either the family member or the Apple member or somebody, maybe an editor is going to create a finished product. But I love the idea that once it's on a hard drive, you can give every family member their own hard drive, and they can edit the story that's important to them. Particularly if there's a blended family or, grandpa wants so badly to do something with these home movies that he spent a lifetime shooting. What a great opportunity for grandpa and grandson to sit down and through iMovie now create an amazing, amazing story or project about the family, adding in voices or because all these tools now are on our home studios that we call our Mac.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, there are opportunities for PC. I remember when I was writing my book, I originally had a chapter and it called It's a Mac World, Get Over It. And then I think you encouraged me to really think about that. And I said, it might be too arrogant, but I think people are at least understanding. They love their iPads. There are even some things they can do with their iPads now, even if they are a PC person. And for anybody who loves playing with images, it's just so much easier. It's not that we're making a value judgment.
Well, it's just like everything in time. Certain things are ahead of its time. Certain things are behind its time. Initially, processing images and doing this kind of basic editing at home was clearly years ahead in the Mac structure, so that it was really accessible for people in the consumer level to do basic editing. I mean, if you go back 10 years ago, no one would have considered themselves an editor unless they were a real professional guy who got paid in the world to be an editor. Today, most young kids, most young people are editors. They can edit in some form on their computer systems. And so that evolution has really changed the way we think about editing, changed the way we think about how we're going to just have movies that we can either do something with or just show. And so I think at the time you were writing that, the perspective was correct, that if you were on a Mac, you probably had a pretty easy time of doing that. And if you were at a PC, you had a very difficult time of doing that. But as time goes on, all those people that are working in the PC, have also created very accessible tools for editing and uploading and creating from a hard drive source. So eventually the PC guys will catch up, and you'll be able to do everything you can do on your Mac with your PC, and they'll sort out some of the, I think that's just a place in time.
Awesome. Well, we're going to be going to commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to give you all the specifics about the class, what's included in the 8 modules, how you can sign up, why you should sign up, and my free bonus offer. So don't go away. You're listening to the Home Movie Legacy Project.
I got an eye on camera. I love to take a photograph.
Raising the consciousness as to why home movies are so important. This is the Home Movie Legacy Project with Rhonda Vigeant, and we'll be back with more right after these on Rockstar Worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for you to create indestructible wealth. Get ready for wealth with Paul Mata and create indestructible wealth. Learn how to make, sustain, and protect your wealth in any economy. Listen live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern and on demand 24/7 right here on Rockstar Worldwide. Paul Mata is the creator of the system for creating indestructible wealth. Paul will share easy tips and strategies on how you can grow all of your assets so you can live an abundant and prosperous life. Each high-energy show will feature interviews with experts who will help you on your path to creating indestructible wealth. For more on Paul, the show, and his Create Indestructible Wealth boot camps, check out Create Indestructible Wealth with Paul Mata or go to createindestructiblewealth.com. Learn how to make, sustain, and protect your wealth in any economy so you can live an abundant and prosperous life with a passion to serve others. Are you excited about getting your home movies and photos organized, but don't know where to start? Well, the Association of Personal Photo Organizers, www.appo.org, can help. The photo organizers are made up of a community of people. They're organizers, photographers, graphic designers, storytellers, historians, people just like you who love photos, home movies, and most importantly, the stories they tell. Through training, education, networking, and collaboration, the Association of Personal Photo Organizers strives to advance this new and growing profession of photo life management. Our hundreds of trained personal photo organizers specialize in helping you rescue your irreplaceable photos and home movies and organize them in ways that make it simple to share your memories, lives, and traditions. Our goal is to help you make those distant memories tangible so you can cherish the life that you share with others. If you need help, look for a personal photo organizer near you by going to appo.org. We are excited and ready to help. Welcome back to the Home Movie Legacy Project, showcasing compelling interviews with people who are telling their personal stories. Rhonda is all about preserving our visual heritage for generations to come before it's too late. So let's get back to the show. It's the Home Movie Legacy Project on Rockstar Worldwide. And here again is your host, Rhonda Vigeant.
Oh, I'm sure the network pushed it out. And welcome back to the Home Movie Legacy Project, where we are talking today about home movie education. So before we went to break, Phil and I were bantering about why home movie education is important. And so let's talk about what's included in my class. It launches on October 6th. It is 8 consecutive Tuesdays from 4:30 to 5:30 Pacific time. We will broadcast it live, but we'll record it. So if you can't listen to the webinar, as I like to call them live, you can always listen to the replay. You're going to get pre-work before each class that will give you like a glossary of terms, so you'll know what we're talking about and be fully prepared for the class. There will be optional homework, and I like to give optional homework just sort of as the 10 tips or 10 main points that we talked about during the unit. And the reason that we do that is because at the end, we're going to give you a final exam, because for people who really are serving other clients as photo organizers or home movie professionals, they sometimes want a credential for their website. So if you pass our exam with 80% more accuracy, we say you're home movie certified. You get a logo for your website. You get a certificate of completion from me that you can show your clients. And I think it's really important, because when you go into somebody's home, or you're even trying to talk to your family about the old media, they want to know that you know what you're talking about. And it just gives you instant credibility and a sense of self-confidence in working with these old film and video formats. You're going to get a copy of my book, an e-version, the ebook, Get Real About Your Home Movie Legacy Before It's Too Late, which is about a 120-page primer on everything you need to know about being head of your own studio, home movie archivist, and just getting urgent about taking care of these things, getting the home movies transfer, but also getting the oral histories and the backstories of who is who and what's what and where's where, because as you know, that information is going to be lost when you lose your oldest living relative if you don't already have all that documented. And so it's really a great program. Right now we're offering an early bird special of $198 through August 6th. And if you go to my website, homemovielegacy.com, you can sign up for that early bird special. Just click on the link. It'll bring you to an online store where you can check out. And for anybody who signs up today, you'll get a free version of the hardcover of my book, autographed by me, Get Real About Your Home Movie Legacy Before It's Too Late. You get the ebook version anyways, but if you're like me, you like real books that you can touch and write notes in. So that's my gift for you if you sign up today. So now let's talk about the actual modules. There are 8 modules. Each one's an hour long, and the first one is called Sprocket to Me. So in Sprocket to Me, we learn a glossary of terms about a topic, but specifically, we're going to be learning about how to identify all those different film and video formats you have. Phil, what has been your experience when people just bring in a box of stuff?
Well, yeah, that's the first thing you have to do is identify. You have to figure out exactly what you do actually have. And you're looking at roughly 100 years of people trying and doing different things in order to create both pictures and sound. And believe me, there is a lot of inventions out there. Everything from 3D processes to tape mediums designed by major companies like Sony, things you've never heard of. And there's a lot of different material. And particularly if you have someone in your family that was sort of into the filmmaking or movie making stuff, they probably took the basic stuff that was offered and they went further. A lot of people know what Super 8 film is, but there's regular 8 film, and then there's double Super 8 film, and then there's sound on Super 8 film. And then if they were real filmmakers, they might have even added a second soundtrack to their Super 8 film, so they have stereo sound recorded on their Super 8 film. It could have been shot in anamorphic, a different way of exposing pictures. So just in the 8mm area, there's probably a dozen different varieties of 8mm, from Polavision to single 8, from Fuji to so just as we talk about something like 8mm right there, we have to define and show you how to identify 12 different versions of 8mm film.
One of the reasons I think this is important is often when we look at the type of film that our relative shot, we get some insight into maybe what their socioeconomic background was, maybe where they served, because if they were in the military, certain film stocks were available at certain commissaries. There are often clues on the boxes that our relatives did a pretty good job of leaving us notes. So Sprocket to me is actually my absolute favorite unit.
Yeah, no, it's a treasured, chest of information. But in order to do something with it, you have to identify it. So,
right.
Short of taking the whole box down to a place like Pro 8mm and putting the box on the counter and asking us to go through it all, you're all over the world here. And so you're going to have to get, and part of what the class is trying to do is give you the tools so that you can identify not only what it is, but how much of it is. You got a spool of something. Is that 1 minute of it? Is it 3 hours of it? So it's also very important to be able to figure out the mathematics of what are you looking at here? Are you looking at 10 hours of 8mm film, or is that really 2 hours of audio?
Right.
They both come on a reel. They both look like a strand of something. If you don't know the difference, you have no idea what you're actually talking to vendors about in terms of if you're going to digitize the material. You've got to get some basic knowledge of what you're dealing with and what you have.
Exactly.
Also, the condition of what it is. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it got to be thrown away because it's beyond salvation, or is it pristine? You've got to be able to size that up as well.
Exactly. So module number 2 is called Cutting Through the Red Tape. And so we're going to learn about all those different tape formats, the difference between NTSC and PAL, and what that means maybe in terms of where your family lived or where they shot. We're going to learn about, the different playback mechanisms and why certain tape formats won't play back in certain players. And
what we talk about in terms of the first module is film-based, analog-based, and the second module is tape-based. And tape has its added sort of caveat that the tapes can look the same, but they don't play the same because what is recorded on the tapes can be very different. So you can have the exact same looking mini DV tape, and what can be recorded on that tape can be different standards from different countries, different formats of recording. So you have to go beyond being able to identify the fact that it is a mini DV tape and have to understand something about what might have been recorded on that tape. So tape has its own set of rules, has its own ways of identifying things, and as with most media, as it's progressed, and tape was the next progression in time, there is more variety of it. So there's literally, I think we must hit 50 to 75 different tape forms in that class.
Yeah, we do. Module number 3, we call the whole 9 yards. And Phil mentioned a little bit before about the importance of calculating footage. For me, the thing that's most important about calculating footage is in setting your budget. Some people come in with very small archives. Some people come in with very large archives. And while we're happy to calculate for you how much footage you have, with that being said, sometimes people have a heart attack when they come in because they just didn't realize their archive was as big as it was. So in the whole 9 yards, we give you some practical tools on how you can kind of start calculating yourself how much Super 8 you have, how much regular 8, how much 16mm, what the price is, how many tapes. So when you're talking with your family about setting a budget, you can be realistic and say, okay, this archive is just too big to do all at once. What if each family member pitches in X amount of dollars and we plan to do X amount over a couple of years? Or it may go the other way and say, you know what? Mom and dad are really getting up there in age. It would mean the world to get this done for them before their 50th wedding anniversary. Let's figure out, how much footage we have so we can agree on a budget. So this is why calculating before you even go to a transfer facility can serve you well.
Yes, and the other side of calculating is that the cost of doing the transfer has a lot to do with the quality level that you want to achieve. But many times those quality levels also represent larger storage of the material. And when you're talking hours of material, the the cost of storing that after you do the transfer process becomes an integral part of what you can really, truly, and honestly afford in terms of doing this. So you may go into it with the idea, oh, I just want the best quality. But when the reality of the fact that you have 300 hours of material hits you, you're going to have to make some value judgments in terms of what can you do economically and what can you afford to store. Because as you put all this stuff into digital medium, it all has to be stored. And that storage medium is going to play a big role in what you can really do with your stuff, what you can really manage if you had it all digitally. So it's very important to understand your numbers and understand what kind of volume you're looking at. This is a big part of what the still photography versus movie photography people don't truly understand, because storing one still photo is very little digital space. When you start doing things with movies, you're talking about things that are hours long. An hour's worth of things are a lot more storage. So a lot of things just cannot be accommodated in movies if your archive is huge. So you got to get a handle on that, because that really sets you up for really how you can possibly do this thing. Because without knowing what kind of volume you're dealing with, it's impossible to make a value judgments on how you want to do it.
Right. We had one client we're still working with, Martin Koenig, who's spent his whole career filming in the Balkans, folk dancing. And one of the things that Martin didn't know before he got started on his very, very, very large archive is that he had the original negatives shot on 16 millimeter, but he also had prints. And I think if had he been able to calculate footage and work with somebody who could really help him sort through it before he started, he may have been able to eliminate some of the prints and some of the duplicates. And so, one of the things we want to do is educate people to spend their money wisely. And that all goes through not only figuring out what you have, but calculating how much you have. So it's very important to have this information and insight as an archivist, as a photo organizer, as anybody dealing with all those reels of media.
Yes, and typical things like having VHS or Betamax copies of pre-existing movies. You're spending a fortune transferring, Snow White, and you can go out and buy a digital Blu-ray copy of that movie for $19.95. So there's no point in taking your archive of Snow White and digitally mastering it. So some of the material is stuff that you don't want in your archive. It's just commercial product that you can source somewhere else. So
right.
So you don't want to waste your money on duplicate stuff. I've even seen many times where people will bring in a bunch of films and videotapes, and they don't realize that the videotapes are copies of the films. So they pay to transfer the videotapes, pay to transfer the film, and one's just a bad copy of
right.
the other. And
they get upset, but they didn't know, and we didn't know.
It's wasteful. So you got to get a handle on
exactly.
this stuff if you really want to maximize,
of course, your value. Module 4, what condition my condition is in. There's a lot of things you can do to assess the condition of your film before you even bring it in. I feel as bad as the person does when they're standing there at my counter and I tell them the stuff's just too badly deteriorated to do anything with. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. So we're going to teach you how to look at environmental, biological, and deterioration of film and film that's just been mishandled. We'll teach you about mold. We'll teach you about vinegar syndrome. We'll teach you the proper way to store your film so it will last another 50 or 100 years. And these are all so important. We're really concerned about archival preservation, not just transfer. I don't know of any other company that is committed as we are to really teaching people about assessing the condition of the film and learning how to protect it so it doesn't deteriorate further, so it'll be there for future generations.
Yeah, I think, one fallacy that a lot of people had was, oh, okay, I've transferred my films to DVD. I can throw those old films away. And not realizing that really the film represents the best archive of the material because it's probably going to outlast the DVD. Well, definitely will outlast the DVD. So you want to preserve the original materials because they are the perfect backup for your material. I mean, nobody wants to think about having to go back and retransfer this material, believe me, but having the ability to go back if something were to happen in terms of the digital. I mean, we do a lot of work with hard drives. We're doing a lot of stuff in a world where failure is possible. And so, if you have a hard drive of something that is not backed up in any way, you have to make many copies of that hard drive to be sure that you have a safety. And when studios are making movies, they're making, a half a dozen copies of stuff just to be sure that they'll have a copy. When you have the original film, you always have the master for that material. You don't have to be as concerned as people who have only digital of losing that material, because and this rarely happens, but if that happened to happen to you, guess what? You have the original material safely stored in your closet,
right,
that you could go back to if you needed to regenerate.
Right, and we're really going to talk about the importance of storage in the class, and it's something people really don't think about. We're going to give you just some tips that'll be worth the price of admission alone, so thank you for that. Module 5 is called It's a Kodak Moment with a C, not to be confused with a Kodak moment. I thought that was a clever play on words myself. So oftentimes people don't really understand what a Kodak is, what a container is. As we continue moving our film to data files, that little extension, be it .mov or .avi or .dpx, we need to learn about that, right, Phil?
Yes. All things digital doesn't mean that all things digital are equal. It just means they're digital, and people falsely misrepresent the fact that all digital is not created the same. There are very poor quality versions of things digitally, and there are very high quality versions of things digitally. And you have to get an understanding of how all the various ways of creating digital, and how digital language is sort of its own thing. And to do anything with anything digitally, you have to understand how those will work with your editing tools, or your playing tools, or your re-encoding tools. So you have to get a basis of what it is now on digital. It's sort of like its own language, and you can't have a French guy speaking to a Chinese guy with two different languages, and it's very much the same thing. In computers, there is a lot of new activity. There's a lot of companies. They have a lot of different proprietary systems. So you're looking at literally hundreds of different versions of these things, and we call them codecs, which is sort of our way of calling it the digital language, sort of, like English and French. It's the codecs, right? So we can't speak if we don't have things that speak the language. So you have to understand what codecs you're using, what codecs you want to go to, what's the differences in those codecs in terms of quality, and how will those codecs allow you to do what it is you want to do.
Exactly. And Module 6, How Scantastic. We're really going to teach you as much as we can about how film gets scanned, how video gets encoded, but scanning technology is in a constant state of evolution. And so let's talk a little bit about that, Phil, because the way we scan film now, moving forward, is not the way we scanned it 6 months ago.
Yes, mostly for better. Scan technology keeps improving, and it keeps changing in the way that it's being done. And there's a lot of reasons why it continually evolves and continually gets better, and we're going to get into that in the class. But I've already, in my 20-so years of transferring film to video, have gone through probably 6 or 7 different kinds of systems over those years. And presently we maintain 3 completely different machines that do transfers completely differently. And each one of those machines has a completely different set of resources and reasons why you would choose one over the other. So it's very important to understand that all scanning is not created equal, that there are a myriad of ways of doing this, from the simple project the film on the wall and point a video camera to it, to $1-million machines that are doing this kind of work. So you've got to get some kind of understanding of particularly when you're thinking of going out and hiring someone to do this kind of work, what kind of machinery are they using?
Right.
What kind of value are you getting for your job? Just because you can get it 10 cents cheaper per foot somewhere else. Remember, this can be done a dozen or so different ways. And for those people who are doing it at the cheapest way, they should be charging the cheapest amount of money. And the people who are doing it the most expensive way need to be charging more expensive.
Sure.
But some of those people doing it the cheaper way think that they can charge what the more expensive guys
Absolutely.
have. Just at a little discount.
They don't compare apples to apples.
That's right. So what you have to do is you have to gain some basic knowledge of what is going on in the scanning world. Otherwise, you're just going to be disappointed with what you get. If you think that you're just getting a deal because someone's having a midnight special or something like that, that's not going to serve you well. You need to understand what it is that you're paying for, and then you'll become a happy customer because
Right.
you know what you're getting.
Well, that's why I think anybody who has a large archive, it's certainly going to be worth $200 to invest in this class, $198 if they register on our early bird special, because you could waste that so easily. I had a guy yesterday who lives not far from where our office is in Burbank, California, who sent it to New York because he thought that was the best scanning technology based on his research. He hated the transfer. He hated it. Then he found out about our company, was doubly angry because he lives 15 minutes away, and had some very, very good questions to ask me. But if he had asked me those questions or asked anybody those questions before he started the transfer, he may not have wasted whatever it was he spent on the other transfer, because now he's going to redo the entire archive.
Yes, I mean, the percentage of our work that's retransfer is actually very large.
Right.
Because there's a lot of disappointment out there with what's going on, partially because it's improving.
Right.
And even we're improving. So, but a lot of it is just because they didn't know what they didn't know. So they went out, they spent the money, they made a value judgment, and that wasn't based on having some good information.
Exactly.
Taking a class will get you that information.
Right. Okay. We only got a couple minutes left. So Module 7 is the flow of go. We want you to know what a workflow is and why it's important.
Yes, you have to understand how this is all going to fit together. If it doesn't all come together in the end and serve you in terms of being able to play it the way that you want to play it, that it isn't very, very much fun and not very interesting to do. So you have to make sure that the end game, like how you want this stuff to end up, is possible, is feasible, and is easily accessible for you to do what you want to do with it.
And finally, module number 8 is called That's a Wrap. That'll be just about everything else, from how to share on social media, maybe how to monetize as stock footage. We're going to talk a little bit in that unit also about sharing on social media. We're going to talk even more about editing, storage, hard drives. Anything else?
Oh, it's a long list, but I think after 8 hours of most of the other 7 hours, you really have a good basis, and it gives us a chance to like fill in anything that comes up with you. And part of having this interactive class, it's done with a slideshow as a webinar, but you can ask questions. You have access to the instructor in terms of finding out, the specifics of your situation relative to what's going on. It's wonderful because you have the teacher there, and you can get your personal questions answered as well.
Right. And I love the fact that we record it live. People can listen to the replay. Again, it's going to be Tuesdays starting in October, 4 o'clock. I originally said 4:30, but I think we're going to make it 4 o'clock Pacific time. Private Facebook page for your questions. And I hope everybody will run over to my website now, homemovielegacy.com. Click the link that says Get Home Movie Certified. And if you register within the next 48 hours, you can get a free copy of my book, Get Real About Your Home Movie Legacy, before it's too late. I want to thank everybody who listened to the show today, and I really do hope that for those of you who have been listening to me for a long time and are serious about learning even more about your archiving, that you'll sign up for Home Movie Education. This hour has gone by much too fast today. If you have any other additional questions, email me, Rhonda, R-H-O-N-D-A, at homemovielegacy.com. And that's a wrap, everybody. See you next week on the Home Movie Legacy Project.
Thank you for being part of the Home Movie Legacy Project with your host, Rhonda Vigeant, here on Rockstar Worldwide. Each week, you'll learn how to take an oral history and a compelling story that will make your great-great-grandkids laugh and make your parents feel young again and get that Generation Y interested in their family tree. This is a different kind of reality show, one that is revealed through the stories and frames shot long ago, so you can shift your focus, transform your understanding, and move forward in your life. The Home Movie Legacy Project. For more on Rhonda and the show, check out our website, homemovielegacy.com. Then be here next week as the journey continues. The Home Movie Legacy Project with Rhonda Vigeant. Thursday evenings at 7 Eastern here on Rockstar Worldwide.